Peace and love. Welcome again. I hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to another reflection. Art, creativity, the sacredness of it all. And today, I'm excited to offer a short review of this book that I just completed reading. Just finished reading today, called The Creative Process, that I have been sharing quite a few quotes from on my Facebook page. And I just wanted to spend a few moments to just say a few words about, first, the importance of, for every artist, and this was a point that was made in the previous book that I reviewed, maybe like a week or 10 days ago, called Art and Fear. If you remember, I mentioned in that review that one of the things that is mentioned in that book, that the authors mention, is that it is very important for every artist to read about the creative process of other artists. That whereas an artist's audience is interested in their work, artists are interested in other artists' process, right? Because, it's just like looking at a great dish, but unable to get the recipe. And as chefs, when they look at another chef's dishes, they want the recipe, right? They want the process through which that chef came up with this great, delicious dish. So the audience, they just want to eat the dish. But an artist, or a chef, they want to find out how to go ahead and make something like that. So taking that into consideration, this is one of the most important things that I experienced personally from reading this book, The Creative Process. Now, this book, it's basically a volume, a collection of essays, autobiographical snippets from various poets, authors, but also scientists, right? Like Einstein is mentioned here, philosophers like Nietzsche and others. Some of it was a bit too technical for my taste, where it looks like at the very biological, neurological explanations for creativity and imagination. But aside from all of that, it was so rejuvenating to read about other artists experiencing the same thing that you go through as an artist yourself, as a poet, as a painter or a musician, to read about how other artists have the same eccentricities as you do, how other artists have the same problems and difficulties that you do, that this path of the artist, or the path of art, is incredibly difficult, and it's very taxing. That artists, one of the people in this book, they go as far as saying that many artists are failures at everything in life except their craft. That they're neurotic. They have a type of severe anxiety and depression and all of that, but that, because of that difficulty, because sometimes as creative people, as a creative person, you might feel like, I have so many problems in my life, I'm lazy, or I have this problem, and then you read about other artists who lived 60, 70 years ago, and they're explaining the exact same thing that you feel, that you're going through. It is very comforting, right? It is very helpful, and it is very reassuring that this is part of the process, This is what it's supposed to be like, right? This is what it feels like. So that's really the sort of the one of the first main points that I wanted to emphasize, is that it's really, really important to read how other artists describe their creative process, their journey in writing, in producing their work. And now I just wanted to spend a few minutes sort of talking about some themes, right? So you've got, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 creative people that are mentioned here, and each of them, there isn't, of course, each of them has their journey, but there is a few themes that I sort of perceived as an overlap between all of them, right? That they each sort of, these ideas or themes seem to spring up amongst all of them, even between scientists and poets and musicians and so on and so forth. One of these, which is a theme that we've been talking about in this reflection series, is that a work of art is neither born completely out of inspiration, nor is it completely slugged out by the artist through their discipline and rigor. It's a trade-off. It's a dance between receiving an inspiration, and some of the authors here described it beautifully, that the inspiration gives you the entire work as an abstract, right? It's all there as an abstract. You can see it, you can feel it, you can taste it, but you can't describe it in language yet. And then your own technique and your own struggle and your own difficulty is that you go maybe months, maybe years, trying to parse out, take apart this abstract meaning that you've received and to put it into an actual work. And this is, they described it like between conscious and unconscious production. The conscious and the unconscious aspects or dimensions of creativity. And I think that's really powerful, right? Because one thing we've been talking about is that as an artist, you have to work every day. You have to work every day. And we said that if the inspiration is there, it's a responsibility for you to sit down and do something with it. If the inspiration is not there, then for you to sit down and work nonetheless is a show of gratitude for those days and those times when the inspiration was there, and it is actually like a shaman dance. You are asking for more inspiration to come. What some mystics call expansion and constriction, right? There are days of expansion and there are days of constriction. When the inspiration is there, it's expansive. Maybe it could also be constrictive. And then the days when there is no expansion, when there is no inspiration, usually these are days of constriction. But we have to do the work either way. And sometimes doing the work when there isn't an inspiration, doing the work when there is inspiration is like saving up some of that energy to carry you through the hard times that are coming, the hard times of constriction that may be coming soon. So I thought that was an important theme. And the other one that I just mentioned, in passing a few minutes ago, is this idea that when the inspiration comes, it doesn't come in detail, right? It comes as an abstract. And I think that that's powerful and important, because many times there is a misunderstanding that creative inspiration is the work. Creative inspiration for a work is not the work. Creative inspiration is not the work externalized, it's the work internalized. And there still remains the task of going through to, again, to bring out, to need that creative inspiration into bread, into something that is tangible, right? It's still ineffable, and there's still the task of needing it into something tangible. One last theme that I wanted to mention is the emphasis on the power of nostalgia, on the power of memory. And one thing that's really remarkable, from those of you that have attended some of my retreats and workshops and know some of the work I do, I had a project called Nostalgic Remembrance, and it was based on my realization that nostalgia plays such an incredible part in my own journey as a poet and my own work as an educator, as a teacher, that I discovered that while writing an autobiography, an imaginative semi-fiction autobiography called The Souq of Nostalgia. And whilst writing that book, I realized that I don't really have any vivid memory of human interactions. Like, I remember the apartment where I was born in Baghdad, in Iraq, and I remember that I was living with my family, but I remember vividly the texture and the place much more so than any human interactions. So that book, The Souq of Nostalgia, ended up birthing itself into a story of places and buildings and walls and aging, wrinkled buildings, much more so than, a regular story, a regular autobiography of my interactions with my father and my mother and my friends and my uncles and my aunts. And I always felt like that was too unusual. It was kind of awkward that somebody would not remember. It felt almost selfish that I do not remember the people in my childhood. But then when I read like Stephen Spender and Henry Miller and others, it was really refreshing to see that was their journey as well. That for them, memory is a key aspect of the author's life, of a writer's life. But more importantly, for them specifically, they do not remember faces and people as much as they remember places. And the last thing I want to mention is that what usually happens to places in memory is they get changed, they get embellished. And that's fine. The places that we spent our childhood in, they no longer exist. Even if the physical place is still there and you can go and visit it, it actually no longer exists as you experienced it when you were a child. So for me, for example, the apartment where I was born is still there in Iraq. But it does not exist now as I remember it. Because the distance in time has embellished it in memory. Imagination and memory, they connive with one another to distort, to embellish places so that they can continue to exist. Like, there are celebrities who always reinvent themselves. Like, they always change their clothing, they change their hairstyle in order to stay fresh. And memory and imagination are like hairstylists. For our faculties are like hairstylists. They do makeover to our memories. Why? So that they can remain fresh, so that we always remember them. But other places, like my grandparents' house, it's no longer physically there anymore. But that doesn't mean that the buildings that are physically there are the same. They're not, right? They're not. And I think that the poet or the writer or the, the author or the painter or the musician, our task is to try and to awaken these memories from their slumber. And the importance of writing, the importance of externalizing what is hidden, what is inside of us, is that we discover certain things about these hidden memories or emotions or feelings that we wouldn't know otherwise. It's like an untold story. We know it abstractly. We sort of see it in our mind's eye or in our heart's eye, but until we see it in front of us, until we write it out, until we let it speak, it remains amorphous. That's that on this book. It's a really great book. It's a bit too technical for my taste in certain places, and that's fine. But I highly recommend everybody pick it up and take a look at it. You can buy it from Amazon, and I look forward to sharing some more reflections and the next books that I'll be reading in the coming every couple of weeks or so. Thank you very much for watching this. Peace and love.